A few minutes after Brian left, Devin became frantic. Even though he knows it won't help, it'll only make things worse, the instinctual part of his brain overwhelms everything. With low, bearish grunts and growls, he yanks and pulls and lunges with all of his weight, just trying to get something other than his own wrists to break. He'd already contemplated dislocating or even breaking his thumbs to pull his paws out of the cuffs, like he'd seen characters do in some movies. But just by looking at the metal, he can tell they're too well fitted for that to be any good. He could gnaw his thumbs off, but he'd still be stuck. So he just yanks until blood is seeping into his paw fur, and even with that added lubrication, they don't budge. Please. 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 It's the only word he says with each grunt of exertion. Finally, as the drugged water begins to take its effect, Dev slumps on his side, crying. He sobs harder than he ever has in his adult life. Cameron, I'm so sorry. Cameron, please. He killed them, all because he needed to find out. Turns out he will find out, because they're going to die. How could he do this to Cameron? How could he be so stupid, naive, inconsiderate, selfish? In a flash of rage and desperation, Devin viciously gnaws at his right forearm, snarling. Again, he knows it's senseless, pointless, detrimental, but the self-loathing is all-consuming, and mostly he just wants to punish himself. After several seconds, he stops, and after blinking away the blur of tears, he sees that while some fur is missing, he barely broke the skin. Devin lets out a hopeless, despairing anguish, even while tears stream down his face. The metal enclosure makes the laugh sound loud and hollow. And that's when Devin stops, as he realizes how unhinged he sounds, how he shouldn't be acting like this. He doesn't have a right to break down. His friend is dead, his best friend. Devin knows he needs to do everything he can to get out. But next time Brian is within reach, he's going to do everything he can to make sure he dies. He'll rip his throat out. But while that fire is rekindled in his chest, he can't fight whatever drug the bear gave him. Devin suspects that it's making him a bit delirious, too. Either way, it's powerful, and Devin knows he probably won't be able to do much for another hour or two, so he lays down, trying to keep his ears open so he can be ready for the old bear if he comes back. If Cameron dies, it doesn't matter if I escape. I won't be able to live with that. Who?
Maddie, Mateo.
Huh? No one's used his second name since... Oh.
Why couldn't you just watch her? Oh, it must be his mom.
Is it his sister that died?
Yeah, it seems like it's his younger sister, Lupita, that died. I guess he's also Hispanic then? If his middle name is Mateo. Interesting. Devin
stays curled up because he knows he imagined that. Or his brain is playing tricks on him, or...
Devin, it's me. I'm here.
Cam? Devin
He's
stares
shirtless. Why is he shirtless?
Because, of course he is. It's because he's vulnerable in his own thoughts.
Did he give him acid? I wonder if the bottle of water he gave him was acid. Or like laced with acid or microdosed or something.
I don't know. I think Cameron's genuinely reaching him because he's talking about trying to do that.
I think so too, but he mentions the water was making him delirious, so I wonder if being put in this suggestible state is what's opening him up to this.
Maybe.
That's also, interestingly enough, very
just,
much like a Stephen King thing.
I figure he's supposed to just get drugged because he wanted him to pass out again.
Yeah, being put on a bunch of acid like that will put you, especially if you're in like a dark room, will put you into like a a little bit of a trance like that, or especially if it's something again like a dissociative like ketamine, it will knock you out basically.
Devin stares at the swirling patterns and lines.
Are you okay?
No, none of us are okay. You're not okay. I don't even know if you're alive. Devin tries to move towards Cameron, but he stays at a constant 10 feet away, no matter how hard the bear tries to get to him.
Devin, I am real.
Cameron carefully enunciates each of those words.
I'm doing this through, like, my mind, I think? Fucking psychic, remember?
Well, now I know this is bullshit. This is what got us into this nightmare in the first place.
Devin.
Yeah. You know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. You are exactly what I was hoping you'd be. You don't exist.
Oh no, don't tell the guy on shrooms that he doesn't exist.
He's gonna stop existing.
He's gonna forget what hands are.
My sick, fucked up mind is making up this version of you that I have no right to create, and Devin's voice trembles with emotion. He's never had a dream where he's felt this real before, this alive, and of course it's happening when he's feeling at his absolute worst. Just wish you were real so I could actually tell you how sorry I am, but I can't take any of this back. Even if we somehow make it out. And you look fine, but I know you're not fine because you're with that goddamn bear. It's quiet for a moment, the only sound being Devin sobbing.
Devin, I know there isn't much I can do to convince you that I'm real. All I can say is that I am real and that I love you dearly.
I love you too.
And yeah, Brian is hurting me, just like he's hurting all of us.
What's he doing to you?
What happened to me not being real?
Well, just in case, are you okay? The look on Cameron's face makes Devin's stomach drop.
Well, not really, no, but he's keeping me alive, so that's what's important. But you see those patterns?
Yeah.
Well, Brian drugged me with shrooms, and I'm tripping absolute balls right now. Hallucinogens enhance my abilities, and I think I kind of created this space. I can't really make this stuff up.
Well, maybe you're right, but he drugged me too, you know. This could still be all me.
You don't give psychedelics to someone you're trying to sedate. Not actually true. You can use psychedelics. I mean, like, historically, like, murderers and serial killers and stuff have used psychedelics to sedate and put people into suggestive states. So, anyway, it turns out I'm not that different from my mom. It's all arches. I see them when I take certain drugs.
Devin looks up at the patterns, and for the first time, he feels like this might actually be Cameron. Cameron?
It's me, yes.
Cameron. Oh my god, please let this be real. Baby, I'm so sorry.
No. We don't have time right now. Also, I kind of read your mind, so I already know. Sorry about that, by the way. It's just happening automatically. But I can sense Brian's thoughts too, and now I know where you are, where the van is, that you're in a set of handcuffs, and I know where the keys are. I'll get you out. Somehow.
Cameron. Honey, please don't do anything that might get you hurt. Please. Devin sees Cameron's lips tremble.
Devin, you know I can't promise that in this situation. Neither of us can, but we're doing this together.
Cameron!
Shit.
Brian? Is he there with you?
I'm gonna be fine, but I gotta go. I love you.
Cameron! No. Damn it, please. He crumples into the darkness, feeling helpless. He should be there with Cameron, not here, sleeping and doing nothing.
We're doing this together.
With a great deal of effort, Devin smothers his frustration and terror, knowing that he should have some faith in his boyfriend. If Cameron thinks he can do this, then Devin realizes he has to believe him. But doubt that it would be real at all starts to creep in again, even though Cameron had convinced him at the time. So he continues to rest, waiting to see if the coyote comes to free him. And hopefully then he can finally get his claws on Brian. You've been standing there for a good 10 minutes, so what'd you see? What happened to no interrupting?
Yeah. Well, I mean, being on crazy synthetic uppers is what happened to it. Well, I'm having trouble because they won't talk to me.
Oh, and why is that?
I think it's because you're here, and they're scared of you. Maybe if you...
Cameron screams, clawing and clutching at the huge fist on his ear. Brian twisting it viciously before lifting it up so Cameron's feet actually lift off the ground. He didn't know it was possible to feel that much pain from his ears, even though he knows they're sensitive.
Stop!
You sneaky fucking faggot! He violently shakes Cameron, and the coyote twists his body, grabbing the bear's forearm and trying to get his legs lifted up and wrapped around the bear's bicep to lessen the pressure, but Brian won't allow it. You know you said everything out loud just now? Oh.
What?
You know exactly what. Very bad. He just said all of that out loud to him. Also arches.
Oh yeah, I see them
all
now.
along the road.
Yeah. It's all
trees.
arches. Yep.
Oh no. He just said his entire plan out loud. He does not know how to use this power. Fuck.
This game is escalating in such an interesting way because every single time we think... Like, it's interesting to see Cameron get progressively more genre savvy and be like, okay, I need to work around this. The reality of the situation is that he's going to kill me, so I can't pretend or like have any doubts that that's going to happen. So we need to get a plan in action. But then like that's like the correct... It's the correct answer in this situation, but then Brian gets the upper hand again, and he has to like shift over and over again. It reminds me of You're Next, the movie where it's like you have this one profoundly genre savvy character progressively going back and forth with other genre savvy antagonists. It's so clever. I like it so much.
Yeah, You're Next is great. It's a great surprise just to show to people. Cameron is slammed up against the trunk of a tree, the impact resonating through his body. Instantly, Brian's huge, rugged muzzle is right next to his own, much smaller, narrow snout, the bear snorting heavily. Cameron fights as best as he can, but his feet are off the ground again, and he kicks and twists, but the grip is more powerful than anything he's felt before. He can actually feel his eyes bulge and his tongue stick out involuntarily, and once again he finds himself
drowning.
In that moment, it isn't the crushing pressure on his neck or the horrid, rancid breath that's coming from the old bear that Cameron notices most. It's that Brian doesn't even seem angry. He doesn't seem enraged that the coyote had been contacting Devin. He doesn't seem upset that Cameron broke his word to help the old bear with his demons. Instead, Brian looks excited, ecstatic, all while staring right into Cameron's face, watching the coyote's mouth open and close noiselessly. Vaguely, Cameron can sense a battle taking place inside Brian. He desperately wants to have his way with Cameron, but he also wants Cameron to exorcise the ghosts. But Cameron can also sense that Brian is realizing his plans are doomed from the start. How would he ever hide the fact that he killed a loving couple in this infamous, abandoned town? He knows people will look for them, unlike his previous victims. The bear is deciding that they're all going to die. This is the end, and he'll end it with one final victim. It doesn't fucking matter. Brian hisses in Cameron's face.
This is what I was talking about. This is that precipice that Brian is on as a character, where he needs to actually physically change, or like this is the end of the road. There's nowhere else for him to go. This is his arc, even if it's a negative arc and it's evil, like in the sense of the story. Like, that's an interesting way to construct a villain.
He's realizing that he's self-destructed by going after these people, so now he has nothing left to lose, so he's the most reckless he's ever been.
Yeah.
Did you see what happened?
He's determined to be reckless in a way.
Did you see what happened a moment ago?
No, what happened?
I went back.
Where was it?
So look at Cameron.
Yeah.
Stare at Cameron.
Oh.
Something moves out of the corner of Cameron's eye, and he looks to see a somewhat familiar face. Its black, void-like features with swirling red eyes stare at him. It's watching him too, like it's just as fascinated as Brian. Cameron senses very little intention or emotion from this creature, but he finally realizes that its purpose in this forest is simple. Record the terrible things that happen in it. Cameron's about to become one of its next recordings. The coyote's vision blurs, and one paw drops, to slip into Brian's pocket, disguising it as him trying to push the bear away. He feels and finds the single key that he knew would be there. God damn it. You're a fucking cute one, you know. Brian's voice trembles with cruel, passionate emotion and nuzzles the coyote. He squeezes harder, and Cameron's eyes roll up, all while putting the key in his own pocket, but he's not sure it matters. Brian already heard his plan. More importantly, though, is that Brian isn't letting up. As he fades into darkness, Cameron feels a part of himself die. The trip peaks, and suddenly Cameron is everything at once. He's a trailer home in the Northwest. He's a desert lake. He's a broken road. He's a trailer home in the Southwest. He's a train cutting through the wilderness.
He's all different roots of echo at once. He's all time at the same moment.
He's being shot in the head. He's being hung from a tree. He's being beaten to death. He's swirling under an arch. He's stumbling into a pond. He's in a space shuttle smashing into the ocean. He's a dead town. Dead, but with working reflexes, using the tools that it still holds tightly in its grasp. Cameron disappears, and these thoughts and feelings are no longer his, because he isn't who he is. He is everything. And because of that, he can see everything. I think he just got into the thoughts of the creature.
Yeah, I think so too.
And just kind of like Doctor Who spread himself throughout the timelines.
Yeah, exactly. He is, because like all of the deaths that were just described are things we've seen.
Doesn't mean anything to you, does it?
What?
You don't know who Souffle,
he's
Girl
Clara.
is, do you? Yeah.
Yeah. That was her name, right? Clara?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pain pounds rhythmically in their head like a heavy drumbeat, making their ears pin back tightly before they begin to whine. Then they croak as their sore throat protests against making the sound. They stare at the scene before them, then they blink. But it doesn't help them make sense of what's in front of them. In fact, it seems to make it worse.
Who's making sense of what's in front of who?
These intrusive thoughts about not existing.
Who's having these thoughts?
See? You're coming around. Fear rises up into his throat, something deep in his brain telling him to flee that voice, to escape from it. But he's still confused to figure out who or what he even is right now, because he still feels like nothing. But he's also still conscious enough to know that he is, in fact, something. He remembers that he's someone named Cameron. He remembers his situation. He remembers that he's been drugged with shrooms and Xanax. His trip has reached its dizzying peak. His sense of self so utterly decimated that he isn't sure he's even going to feel the same again. The terror and torture of the past 2 days has culminated to this, the moment that his mind gives in and breaks, and Cameron can't tell what's real and what isn't anymore. But there's something else, too. Despite the terrible loss of who he was, Cameron, this amalgamation he calls Cameron, is sensing things even more vividly than he had just a few minutes ago, when he'd contacted Dev. Cameron sees what's ahead of him, but he's seeing so much more. In his mind's eye, he looks forward, and he sees a myriad of people in front of him, though they're all the same people. Devin, Brian, and himself, locked in a vicious, spinning blur of claws and teeth, blood, and horrific, just got worse, unidentifiable viscera. So it's Brian on the left, Devin in the middle, and Cameron on the right.
Yeah. Is he? So part of me is wondering if it's gonna. This is like a rewind. Like he was seeing the future if he tried to lie.
I don't know.
Brian. Yeah.
You got the key, which seems like a weird setup to have if you don't continue that.
True.
It's confusing, seeing so many versions of himself and his boyfriend, and he turns his head to glance away, not wanting to see that violence.
I feel so vindicated. I think I was right. I think he's seeing all the different possibilities of what could and could not have happened.
And then, noticing something over his shoulder, he looks back, and this time he sees one version of himself, along with Brian. He sees his unconscious body being pinned against a tree for a while longer before it crumples to the ground.
What the hell?
His voice is low, husky, and barely audible. Brian laughs, startling the coyote out of his visions of violence. I choked you the fuck out, that's what! Cameron blinks at the bear, then back at the forest.
I thought I died.
Not yet, kid. We got a few things to do first, and you probably want to see your boyfriend too, eh? Not sure you'll get to talk to him since he's knocked out.
Knocked out?
Yep.
Wait, with what?
Relax. It's just Rohypnol. Sure, I gave him a good amount, but they're a few decades old because they made them illegal in the States back in the 90s. And you know, when pills get old, they don't work so good anymore. Fucking Brian exposition over here. Yeah. Brian goes on and on about Rohypnol and how it used to be the premier date rape drug in the country. Cameron watches the bear's mouth move in waves and ripples, yellow teeth poking out from behind his lips as saliva collects and becomes frothy at the corners.
Who's watching this?
Cameron reassures himself automatically.
I'm watching this and I need to save Devin.
He's not so convinced by the first part, though.
Me. Cameron. Simple concepts that aren't so simple anymore. Just like in high school, he's stopped existing. It's different this time, though. The Xanax is certainly quashing the panic he should be feeling right now, but this time, his perspective is from a completely different angle. Cameron's amalgamation does still exist. The borders have dissolved. He seems to be seeping into everything. Despite already knowing he's insignificant, he's still awestruck by how small Cameron is compared to the world. Even the bugs crawling beneath the leaves make Cameron feel small, an entire world he knows nothing about. But entangling his identity with the universe means he's also entangled with Brian. The bear is missing parts of himself, kind of like Artie, shattered pieces and jagged holes, pockmarking the landscape of his life. Cameron almost feels sorry for him, that maybe if things had been just a little different, the odds just a little more in Brian's favor, he could have been a very different person.
What's really disturbing, though, is the genuine affection he has for Cameron, his urge to caress and hold the coyote. But there's a hatred there, too, a disgust for what Cameron is. Young, attractive, and a fag. Not just queer, like Brian considers himself to be, but a faggot. The kind of queer that acts real cute before fucking over the real men who should be doing all the fucking. So it feels good to punish Cameron, but it's even better to watch him suffer, to watch the way his body writhes, to his mouth open for air, his eyes wide and fearful. Cameron feels himself recoil from understanding Brian's thought process, a way of thinking he'd never consider himself. But that thought process isn't what makes Brian the terrible person that he is. Cameron knows that most don't have a say in how their sexual interests and fetishes develop, so the thoughts themselves aren't exactly evil, at least not to Cameron. Cameron knew a few guys in college who had interests similar to Brian. During his first year of dating Devin, the bear had timidly asked him if he could gently close his teeth over the coyote's neck and growl.
Kinky, wow.
It was thrilling and intense, and Cameron loved the rush. But then Devin had a nightmare about tearing out Cameron's throat, and that was the end of that. So, to Cameron, Brian isn't all that strange. What makes Brian different isn't that he has fetishes. He's not crazy. He's not a psychopath. No. The true root of Brian's evil is clear. He's selfish, and he's never satisfied with what he gets. Selfish enough to put dozens of young people through hellish torture until they finally died, all while having the capacity to fully control himself. All while having full access to alternatives like roleplay. But it's not enough. He always needs more. All for his own fleeting, drug-fueled sexual gratification, because at one point, Brian decided that's what makes him feel good, so fuck this world that makes him feel bad. And he'd found some release in strangling Cameron, and now his focus is turning back to a vague idea on how to use Cameron's abilities. Something to stop him from spending the rest of eternity with his victims torturing him. Cameron could spoil the ending for Brian, let him know that when everyone dies, they just cease to be what they are. That's it. Ghosts, demons, poltergeists, creations of the living, and whatever it is that's an echo. Cameron draws back at this point, getting overwhelmed by all the thoughts coming from the old bear, unable to understand them without more context. Looking forward, he glimpses the various scenarios again, and the one constant is death. Most involve him dying, and a good amount involve Devin dying as well. Cameron imagines that this is indicative of what's most likely to happen. But a few, just two in fact, show Cameron and Devin surviving, with Brian either living or dying. Cameron doesn't care much about the latter, just as long as he can get Devin and himself out of Echo alive. They can deal with Brian afterwards. Cameron doesn't even care much if he doesn't make it, especially in this state of mind, but he won't accept not being able to save Devin. Suddenly remembering what he had done earlier, Cameron tries to subtly brush his pocket, and is amazed that the key is still there. Does Brian know? Well, he does know that Cameron had planned. He does know what Cameron had planned, but in his own excitement, and especially because he's tweaked out, he's hyper-focusing on other things. He's also missed the key being taken out of his pocket. That, and Brian's memory is terrible. Decades of drugs at neurotoxic doses has dismantled who he used to be.
That's what I was talking about when I was mentioning how, whatever it's called, morphedrone or mephedrone, it's incredibly neurotoxic when taken at high doses, especially ingested the way that Brian did. I mean, I just caused
permanent damage.
Yeah, I just know it from Googling it, but like, it's like literally the first thing that shows up when you search what it is. It's like, don't do this. It can kill you very easily. Many people have died from it. It drills holes in your brain.
He doesn't even seem to remember why he choked Cameron in the first place. Had to make connections down in Sonora. Stuff was over the fucking counter there, but it was easy to get. But getting it over the fucking border was a whole different issue. Brian suddenly stops talking, eyes narrowing. Cameron's pulse quickens as he wonders if Brian had just remembered his plan.
What's wrong?
His voice is still rough from the strangling, a deep soreness starting to emanate from the core of his neck. I don't know. I just like you better when you're smiling. But if I'm fucking boring you, just say so. He's on a different planet. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It takes Cameron a few seconds to understand what Brian is even talking about, then a few more to scan the bear's thoughts. In Brian's mind, his smiling had a lot to do with how interesting the bear's over-explanation of Rohypnol was, so Cameron quickly puts one on his face.
Sorry. It is really interesting. I'm just so overwhelmed with the drugs and...
Shut up! Cameron shuts up. Brian starts to work his jaw, like he's chewing something, before clenching his fists. Cameron tenses up, preparing himself to be hit again. You're cute, but not that cute, and I'm not that stupid. I hate fags like you, sucking up and sucking dicks so you get what you really want. Brian's mind flicks through a few faces, but the only one defined enough for Cameron to comprehend is a fox in a red hat. Then Brian seems to relax, but the anger is still there, the bear having honed it to become more cool and collected, which only makes it all the more terrifying. Sure, stimulants increase empathy like in a normal brain, but if Brian abused them to the point where that amphetamines felt like caffeine, then it probably only increases his irritability and rage. That's what his mother was like in the end, and it always confused Cameron as to why someone would want to do a drug that makes them feel worse. I got a better idea. Cameron gasps as Brian grabs him by the ear.
No, stop. I can walk with you. I won't try to run. Ow!
Cameron senses the bear's amusement at his fear of being pulled up by his ear again. And the coyote quickly stifles his begging, realizing it might shift Brian's interest back into using Cameron for torture rather than his abilities. The pain had been blinding, but it's nothing, absolutely nothing compared to what this bear has done to others. Cameron manages to settle into a stumbling walk as Brian pulls him along, bent over and trying to see the ground in the darkness, all while he tries to carefully follow the bear's rough, unpredictable movements. Every minute or so, Cameron looks forward and sees the scenario he's aiming for, still within reach. so he keeps walking. Meanwhile, a van emerges from the trees, parked a ways off the side of the road. Brian freezes, staring. Then he lets out a surprised laugh. Well, I'll be damned, this fucker got away.
Who?
The coyote winces as Brian continues to hold him by the ear. Cameron hopes that he's talking about Devin, even though he can sense the presence of the younger bear just ahead of him. He means Artie. He noticed he's gone.
Yeah, Artie. He noticed.
The coyote would be glad to be proven wrong about his abilities, especially if it means Devin gets away. But Cameron knows. That cat! I swear I shot him twice, too. Then again, he didn't do that weird jerking thing people do when you give him the kill shot, so I must have missed the second time.
Can't believe Brian tried to double tap him from that range with a handgun. And he's the fact that he managed to hit once is remarkable, but the fact that he thought he did it twice is crazy.
And he just was confident. He didn't even check.
Yeah.
Thought maybe I'd killed him with the first. Cameron looks where Brian is staring and sees the spot where Arturo must have been. Dark stains cover the leaves, along with what looks like vomit, and Cameron feels his own stomach churn at the sight. It's difficult to connect his outgoing, oblivious friend to this mess, and Cameron feels guilt mingle with his misery as he realizes that what's happening to Artie is their fault. But he knows Artie is far away now, miles away, and Cameron silently encourages the cat to keep going, to do whatever he can to save them and himself, even though he's clearly in terrible shape. Cameron hopes Artie can hear him, even if he's awake right now. Cameron senses another ominous shift in the bear's motivation. Brian doesn't think that Artie will make it to the interstate, and he knows he should go looking for the cat. But everything is so fucked from the start. 3 young men who likely have close family and friend groups, all 3 of them injured and beaten, and all 3 knowing full well what Brian is capable of. There's no point to it anymore. Brian had almost reverted to thinking he'd get away with all this somehow, but no. This is the end. Well, guess that's it then. Figured it was getting close for a while now. The calm with which Brian accepts his nearing demise makes Cameron want to try to escape all over again. Why can't this bear just end it without taking them down with him? It's the end for him, not them.
Can I see Devin?
Cameron half-heartedly smiles, hoping it might sway the bear, but he's not paying attention to the coyote. Brian shakes his head at the sober version of himself, the version that actually did plan to let Cameron go, because why would he add to his problems by killing the yote if said yote could take them all away? That's why he tried to be nice to him, and then of course things got out of hand. Cameron begins to shake as he senses Brian's arousal and excitement. He's thinking about Cameron, about his baggie full of bath salts, and about how long it might have taken to find them. How long it might take to find them in. Cameron blanches mentally, unsure what that dark place full of death is, but he knows he does not want to go there.
Where are you taking me?
You're the psychic, figure it out. Keeping his hold of the coyote, Brian pulls Cameron towards the van. They're gonna be headed towards that mine.
Sure are.
Nope.